So Waino twirls a quality start, but he's still chasing that pesky 199. But did the Masyn window just open up for the Cardinals? All coming up on Busch Stadium Daily. What's going on, everybody, and welcome in to this edition of Busch Stadium Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you in the evening hours of Thursday, August 17th, 2023. Plenty to talk about tonight as it pertains to Cardinals baseball. Yeah, the Cardinals lost to the Mets, the series opener at Busch Stadium against New York. 4-2 New York with the win over the Cardinals, over Adam Wainwright, who pitched well in this game. Definitely relative to the way he had been performing recently. We kind of had the mindset coming into this Wainwright start. Was he pitching for his spot in the rotation? Was something going to have to give if we didn't see something of substance out of Waino tonight? We did, and I think we can allay those fears, at least for the time being. But he still can't get off the schneid, taking the loss in this game, still stuck on 198 career wins in the big leagues. And time is dwindling for Adam Wainwright to come up with win number 200. But if he throws a handful of more starts the way that he pitched tonight, I think there is still a good chance he gets to 200. But we hadn't seen this version of Adam Wainwright in quite a while. So what was different for Waino in this one? Do we think it's something he can replicate moving forward? We'll talk about that tonight on the podcast. We'll also talk about the big news in Cardinals land. What I think a lot of people are definitely most interested in hearing about is Masyn Winn. His time has come. The Cardinals making it official late Thursday night, announcing that they are calling Masyn Winn to the big leagues. He will be in the lineup for Friday, almost assuredly. He's on the active roster anyway, and you should expect him to be in the starting lineup for the Cardinals, most likely as the starting shortstop Friday night against the New York Mets. Get your tickets now. I'm sure there are some available for that game at Busch Stadium. But yeah, Masyn Winn is here, and we'll talk about what that means for the Cardinals moving forward. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping on the rookie eligibility stuff, because I know some people are probably wondering, well, wait, I thought you said Saturday would be the earliest we would see Masyn Winn. I did say Saturday would be the earliest. It turns out I'm just bad at math. No, it's not really math. I just had misinterpreted a little bit the ruling on that. I think Masyn Winn's rookie eligibility is completely safe. It's going to be intact. We'll talk about how the Cardinals can make sure that's the case as it pertains to 2024 and why it's so important for those who maybe have just been on the periphery of this conversation and don't really understand, well, why does it matter if he's eligible as a rookie in 2024? We can explain all of that tonight on the episode of Busch Stadium Daily that you're currently listening to. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button on YouTube, click like on this video, and drop your comments in the YouTube comment section below. How excited are you that the Cardinals finally did it? The move that we said would be coming at some point in August. It was just going to have to make sense related to the calendar and the rookie eligibility clock. That Masyn Winn's finally in St. Louis and going to be part of the Cardinals the rest of the way, giving fans maybe a little bit of extra charge, something extra to look forward to in a season that has otherwise been, well, a bit of a bust. So let me know what you're thinking about Masyn Winn. Finally going to see Jordan Walker and Masyn Winn in the same lineup at the same time in St. Louis, which is very exciting. But we'll start tonight by talking Adam Wainwright, at least briefly before we kind of bug out on the Masyn Winn news, which is definitely very exciting. But I think it's exciting, too, that Adam Wainwright was able to have a quality start on Thursday, pitching 6 innings of 3-run baseball. The 2-run homer by Pete Alonso got him, and that was certainly what contributed to Waino getting charged with the L in this game. Also, the fact that the Cardinals couldn't support him with very much offense in this one. They fall 4-2. So Wainwright getting through 6 innings, despite the 3 runs being a pretty modest total compared to what he had done recently. I mean, he had given up 8 earned runs in his last start against the Royals, and that was only 3 outs he had recorded in that game. He did pitch into the second, but did not record an out in that inning. Has the decent outing tonight, takes the loss, but I think a lot to take away from it in terms of positives for Wainwright moving forward. This was a game that I just didn't know for sure if we'd be able to see from Wainwright again in 2023, which essentially means again in his big league career, because this is going to be his final season. And with some of the numbers that he had posted recently, it was definitely getting to the point where, I mean, we talked about it on the big show this afternoon. You may have seen that video pop up on my channel shortly before the Cardinals game. We didn't really know whether keeping the faith with Wainwright was the right way to go about it. Like I had said, and I continued to maintain, look, I'm going down with the ship on Adam Wainwright. If Adam Wainwright ends up failing all the way through the end of this season, his final season in the big leagues, so be it. I'm not going to count him out because I made that mistake once before, and he proved me wrong. And over the course of 2020 and 2021 and 2022, he was one of the Cardinals' best starters, a top 30 or 40 starter in Major League Baseball over that span. If you look at the cumulative numbers that he posted in that time frame, that's really something that's impressive and meaningful, I think, from Adam Wainwright over the twilight of his career. So the fact that 2023 has been a really rough one for him didn't put me into the mindset, even going into tonight, even after all that we have seen from him recently, that, oh, he's cooked, oh, he's done. He's not going to be able to give any more memorable moments to Cardinals fans the rest of the way. No, I said I'm going to continue to say, I don't really know how he's going to do it, but he'll find a way. And Wainwright found a way tonight. 6 innings, 3 runs, only 4 hits allowed. The 3 walks, a little more uncharacteristic of what we expect Wainwright to be, but it's very characteristic of what he's been this year. Has struggled a little bit with command, and I think he's got to be extra fine because his stuff is not quite on the level that it has been historically, and he's got to find ways to beat hitters, even if every pitch is not in the ideal location. He has to avoid the mistakes that can get punished. So I feel like that's part of the reason that you're seeing more walks from Wainwright this year. But when you tend to give up a lot of the base hits as well, the hits that don't necessarily go over the wall, but they pile up against you, you don't want to have base runners on the board whenever those hits take place. It just leads to more runs against, and that's been the story of Wainwright's season. His ERA coming into tonight at 8.78. It's still in the mid-8s even after a solid quality start. But how do we feel about Adam Wainwright after this one, Cardinals fans? It did seem like he was back to sort of the Wainwright that we largely expected to see this season. I would say, last year he finished with an ERA around 3.9. September was really a struggle for him, but still some pretty good numbers. If you would have thought coming into the season, Adam Wainwright's going to have an ERA around 4, maybe 4.2, maybe as high as 4.5, which would be the pace that he was on in 6 innings of 3 earned run baseball tonight, you'd say, all right, that at least makes kind of some sense where he might lose a step but be pretty serviceable and probably eat a lot of innings for the Cardinals rotation. It just has not been that way this season for Adam Wainwright. He has not been able to be the innings eater that he long has been for the Cardinals, and the ERA is the main reason why. His ERA up over 8 is not going to be conducive to long outings. But in watching the way he attacked the Mets lineup tonight, I really do feel like he had a little bit of that swagger on the mound again, a little bit of the pace to his game where he's attacking hitters saying, I know I don't throw 95, but I can get stuff by you. I can make you swing at pitches that you're not going to be able to barrel up. And Wainwright had a lot of that going on tonight. Does it give you faith that he's going to be able to continue that the rest of the way and in turn find a couple of wins as he goes along? The Cardinals didn't help him out tonight against Jose Quintana. I figured it would be a tough one because Quintana pitched well with the Cardinals last year, even though he's largely been injured this season. He thrived at Busch Stadium. That's where tonight's game was, and familiarity with that Cardinals lineup. I just thought Quintana would have a good game, and he pitched pretty well against St. Louis in this one. So the run support just wasn't there for Wainwright. But if he goes, I don't know, it's mid-August right now. You can maybe count on 6 or 7 more starts, depending on how the calendar falls for Wainwright the rest of the year. If he's able to put up 7 more starts, and in 5 or 6 of them can give you a quality start like he did tonight with 6 innings and 3 runs, he's going to come up with 200 wins. I think the Cardinals offense is explosive enough that they're not going to do him dirty 6 or 7 more times. But this is one of the better outings we have seen from Wainwright this year. So is it something that he can replicate not only once or twice, but on a regular basis the rest of the way? Because it's not always a guarantee that if you pitch well or pitch even decently, you're going to be rewarded with a win. There are a lot of other aspects that are going to play into that for the Cardinals and for Adam Wainwright. So I don't know. I still am of the mind that he can find a way to get to number 200. I think if he gets the first one at 199, the second one is going to be closely behind because that's going to be something that can propel him forward. But the reality of it is he does need more than just his own ability to pitch well to get those wins under the belt. It's 2 more to go. It's the same number that's been for weeks and weeks and weeks at this point. What's your confidence level, Cardinals fans, in Adam Wainwright being able to get there before the end of the season? Let me know in the YouTube comment section below. And let me know what you thought of his pitching tonight. Again, the New York Mets was a team that he had fared pretty decently against previously in this season. Again, a lot of his games, you look at the last one against the Royals, rather concerning, especially given that lineup isn't a very good one. But when you look through his game logs, back on the 17th of June was probably his best start of the season prior to tonight when he gave up 3 runs over 6 1/3 innings pitched. He actually pitched into the 7th in that one, allowing 7 hits and 3 earned runs on a couple of home runs. Tonight, pretty similar story. Gave up just the 1 home run, but 3 earned runs again on 6 innings pitched. It gets the job done, but you do need the offensive support to back you up if you're on this quest for 200 wins. I do think, though, tonight, unequivocally, enough to keep Wainwright in the starting rotation. We didn't get to see the postgame on Bally Sports Midwest because it was not a Bally game. Game was nationally aired on Fox 2, which I'm not honestly sure why that was, but I was not at the game tonight because tonight was the first week of my fall bowling league that starts up on Thursdays, and that did not go very well. Adam Wainwright pitched much better than I bowled tonight, so we're just going to leave that right at that without explaining that any further. But nevertheless, what that means is I don't exactly know the way Wainwright described or felt about his outing afterwards in terms of having been there in the clubhouse to hear from him. Do have a quote that we can read from John Denton of MLB.com. He tweeted this out earlier tonight. Adam Wainwright on his own self-reflection, quote, "That's not who I am." I believe he's speaking of the way he has been pitching this season. "That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. I could pitch left-handed better than that," which is kind of a funny element to that quote. He says, "You've got to look in the mirror and ask, is this who you are? No, that's not. Well, then stop frickin' pitching like that." Actually, the quote is, "Well, then frickin' stop pitching like that." So, yeah, Adam Wainwright not looking to pitch the way that he's pitched this year. I think that is obvious. Cardinals fans would like to see more of what they saw from him tonight. And to go quality start, 6 innings, I know it's against a Mets team that has also kind of struggled, but you're going to count it no matter who the opponent is at this point. Wainwright just needs something that he can build upon. I think tonight was certainly that. You would like to see it line up where the offense can do well on the same day that Adam Wainwright does well. It is still a loss for the Cardinals, and they've had plenty of those this season, which is why they're in the situation that they're in. But to think that he wouldn't be able to come up with 2 more wins the rest of the way as long as he maintains that level of sharpness, I don't know. I'm just, maybe call me an optimist, but I think he can get it done. And perhaps he'll continue to go with the strategy. That's not even a word. It's after midnight, so I'm just going to leave that in, not edit that out, and you guys can laugh at me. The strategy for Wainwright of didn't throw the side session. A lot of times starting pitchers, couple of days after their previous start and before their next one, they'll throw that side bullpen session, whether it's 40, 45 pitches, various intensities in terms of trying to work on pitches or throw for velocity or just stretch your arm out. Whatever a guy needs in that side session, it's to kind of turn the page and get ready for the next one and keep that arm loose and sharp. Wainwright forgoes that this time around, skips it, and ends up looking a lot sharper. I don't know if there's anything to read into that, if that's something that he will continue to do, but it might stand to reason that it would make sense for him to keep that approach because tonight it did look different. It looked like vintage Waino where, yeah, you're going to give up a home run here and there, but if you're able to avoid that in a given outing, you're going to end up probably with a 6-inning, 1-run game that is definitely one that can keep you in line for a potential win if you get the cooperation from your offense. But when I say vintage, I don't mean like the Cy Young contending years that Waino had, but tonight looked a lot more like Waino from 2020 to 2022, which was still pretty darn good. Check out the cumulative numbers. ERA in the mid-3s. He had some good years for the Cardinals not too long ago. This hasn't been one of them, but he's going to try to finish on a strong note. And the Cardinals are in no position right now to say, oh, no, we don't want Wainwright in our rotation. Like, there's just nothing to talk about after a game like tonight. He didn't have to show much. I think he showed even a little bit more than what he would have needed to give the Cardinals in order to basically put that conversation to bed in terms of maybe changing his role. He's going to remain in the rotation. There's no doubt in my mind after what we saw tonight. Now it's just a matter of can he find those 2 more wins. Cardinals fans, make sure you're clicking subscribe on this video, on this channel. Brenden Schaeffer, St. Louis Cardinals writer. I'm a writer for KMOV in St. Louis. I will be down at the ballpark on Friday night as the Cardinals take on the Mets for Game 2 of this series. And when I am down there, I will cover the first Major League game, the Major League debut of Cardinals shortstop prospect Masyn Winn, because Masyn Winn is heading to the big leagues. The Cardinals announced it officially as of this recording on Thursday night. He is heading to the major leagues, promoted by the Cardinals from AAA Memphis. The bad news, the corollary to that is Lars Nootbaar's going on the injured list with the lower abdomen injury that he was listed with. Of course, we know it's not really the abdomen so much as what exists for him lower than the abdomen. and we won't get too gratuitous with that, but you know what I'm talking about there. It didn't look very pleasant when he took the hit by pitch off that area the other night, tried to play through it, went out in the field, said, nah, this actually isn't happening. Wasn't really available for the Cardinals off the bench today, and you kind of figured that could end up in an IL stint. They can make it retroactive to where they get all the credit for the injured list stint, kind of like they did with Andrew Kisner the time earlier this season when he went to the emergency room, actually, with, I believe, a rather similar incident. But then as soon as the 10 or so days were up for him on the IL, he was able to return to the Cardinals. I envision it would be similar for Lars Nootbaar, but I guess I'm not 100% sure on the level of pain, the level of mobility that he'll have as the days go and the swelling goes down, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, Lars Nootbaar, part of the many injuries the Cardinals are dealing with right now. But what it means is clears the way for Masyn Winn, who will make his Major League debut on Friday. So a quick housekeeping note before we get into the nitty-gritty on what Masyn Winn arriving to St. Louis actually could mean for the Cardinals the rest of the way and into 2024, because that is where things really start to hopefully cook again for the Cardinals as they look to get back into contention next year. I want to make sure that I clarify. I had been saying you wouldn't see Masyn Winn before Saturday, but you probably would see him by Saturday, if not very soon after that. I was very confident that within the next handful of days, Masyn Winn would be with St. Louis, and all of the reasoning behind that pertains to maintaining his rookie eligibility for 2024. Here's why that matters before I explain the nitty-gritty of the numbers game behind it and how the Cardinals will still have to pay mind to some of these rules to make sure they don't exceed that for Masyn Winn down the stretch this year, because there is an at-bat number that they have to not exceed in order to make sure that when he's on the roster for opening day next year, he can still be eligible for Rookie of the Year. It matters because under the new collective bargaining agreement, which was signed heading into 2022, I think is correct on that. The lockout was winter of 21 into the 2022 season last year. And they put in a stipulation, kind of a new rule change or new agreement within the CBA that was to curtail the service time manipulation that was going on rampant throughout baseball in recent years. Chris Bryant was the first real famous case where he was just such a stud top prospect for the Cubs that year, but yet they still couldn't find a way to put him on the Major League roster out of spring training. He was more than ready. They wait a couple of weeks, and then ta-da, oh, you've checked all the boxes now with your preparation in the minor leagues. We're ready to see you in Chicago. Yeah, it was to manipulate the service time so they could keep him under team control for an additional year. But that deadline happens in like mid-April. That's not at all related to what the Cardinals are doing with Masyn Winn now, because this was put in as a way to try and curtail that so teams wouldn't manipulate the service time in the same way. And what was put into the CBA was the idea that if you have a Rookie of the Year eligible player who's on the opening day roster and spends X amount of a percentage of the season on that roster, which I think is basically, as long as you don't manipulate the 2-week service time, it's enough to count for this Rookie of the Year eligibility. It's draft pick compensation that actually comes into play. So being on the opening day roster, not spending fewer than like 14 or 17 days or whatever it is in the minors throughout a full season makes you eligible for when you win Rookie of the Year. Your organization would then recoup a draft pick. Not recoup. You don't really lose anything to account for it. You just gain it for free as an incentive to get teams to call up their top exciting prospects early, not try to manipulate their service time to get an extra year out of them. It's an obvious benefit to teams. It is good for the players that then don't have to worry about them, their teams trying to finagle an extra year of service out of them, which isn't the way it necessarily should be, because if you're ready to go day one, why wouldn't you be on the team day one trying to help your franchise win as many games as you can? So that's the way they set it up, and it worked to a charm for the Seattle Mariners and Julio Rodriguez. In the beginning of 2022, they put him on the opening day roster because they thought he was ready. He wins the Rookie of the Year in the American League last year, and then when the MLB draft in July was held actually in Seattle, the Mariners got a bonus draft pick between the first and second rounds, I believe it was, and it is related to like market size and different elements as to where that draft pick would be placed. I think for the Mariners, who are one of the smaller markets, it was placed right between rounds 1 and 2 in that kind of compensatory round, if I'm not mistaken, that they got a brand new bonus draft pick just because they went in line with the new rules for the CBA as to how you can handle top prospects. You have to be on the top prospect list to qualify. I think it's the Baseball America list, the MLB.com list, and maybe ESPN's got a list. And you've got to at least be on 2 of the 3 top 100 prospects in baseball lists in order to qualify for this. But Masyn Winn, of course, has been littered on those top prospect lists throughout the game and is a prospect that a lot of people nationally are aware of and recognize his talents as a arguably 5-tool player. So the entire idea here is the Cardinals need to wait just long enough that Masyn Winn will not ruin his rookie eligibility for 2024, because on the off chance that he has a really great 2024 season and would win Rookie of the Year, the Cardinals would then, in the following draft, I guess that would be the summer of 2025, they would get a very tantalizing draft pick just for following these new rules and, going in with that incentive of having Masyn Winn on their roster to begin next season. Now, in order to make sure he's still eligible, he's got to have no more than 45 days on the Major League roster this year. That's one of the stipulations. That's one of the ways that if he has more than 45, that's one of the ways that he can break that eligibility where he would not have it going in to 2024. So the Cardinals have waited down to the day exactly the right amount of days to make sure that does not happen. They're not going to ruin his eligibility. That's where I have to give the mea culpa, because I had been saying Saturday would be that day. It's actually Friday, because I was mistaken in thinking it was if he spends 45 days or more on the Major League roster this year, that ruins it. That's not what it is. It's he has to spend no more than 45 days. So specific down to the number of 45 days on the Major League roster this year is okay. That's still kosher. That still qualifies. He'll be eligible as a rookie going into 2024, and then he'll just need to spend at least, the 90% or whatever it is. It's a certain number of days, but as long as he's on the Major League roster by opening day and they don't send him down for whatever weird reason, kind of like the Cardinals did with Jordan Walker. Like, I think if by some stretch Jordan Walker was able to win Rookie of the Year this year, he'd have to go on a ridiculous tear. I don't think he's really in the running right now. I don't think the Cardinals would qualify for that because he didn't spend enough of the 2023 season in the big leagues, even though they had the good intentions of, hey, we started him on the opening day roster. Well, they sent him back down for like a month. And so that kind of nixed that whole thing. But again, his performance down as a defender and the OPS, the offensive numbers, while encouraging for the future, not the level of like a Corbin Carroll or a number of other players who will be in consideration for that award in the National League at the end of the year. But to just make sure that Masyn Winn is eligible, I think, is the key to all of this. It's not saying he's going to win Rookie of the Year and the Cardinals are going to get that draft pick, but if you're this close to being able to ensure that your guy is eligible next year, you would make sure that you don't mess that up if you're the St. Louis Cardinals, because the downside is, well, there isn't any downside. It doesn't affect his service time. He's still going to be under team control for the same number of years because, like I had said, that deadline was way back in April. You had to, if you're going to manipulate service time for 2023, yeah, he's not going to get a full year of service time for anything he does the rest of the way this year. So it's still going to be the regular 6 years, and that'll start in 2024. He'll be a little bit beyond 6 years of service time, assuming he never gets sent back down. This doesn't change anything, though, in terms of team control for Masyn Winn. And in fact, being on the roster all of next year, winning Rookie of the Year, even if you don't qualify for the draft pick compensation for your team, as a player, I think if you finish in the top 2 or maybe it's even top 3, I'd have to check that, you get a full year of service time as a result. So there's just minimizing the reasons and the benefits to potentially manipulating service time for players, because if you have a really talented guy, there's no reason to do it anyway, because if he finishes ever so high in the award voting, he's going to get credit for that service time and he's going to get that full year anyway, just incentivizing teams to have guys there. Masyn Winn is going to be on the Cardinals in 2024. There's no doubt about that. It's just making sure that he's still a rookie when he does it. So we've explained the reasoning why it matters. Heck, you could get a draft pick. That should be simple enough for people to get on board with. The numbers game with it, half the battle is the 45 days, and they're going to have that to a T. That's not going to be a problem. I was wrong with not even with my math, but just my interpretation. Cannot exceed 45 days. I thought it was, if it's 45 days, you're bounced. It needs to be 44 or fewer. No, 45 days is fine. Tomorrow will be his first day. There are 45 days left in the season. Masyn Winn will be good to go on that front. But the Cardinals do just have to make sure he does not get to exceed 130 at-bats over the rest of the season, which if you were batting leadoff or number 2 in the order with any level of frequency, conceivably that could actually happen. The Cardinals still have about 40 games left, 41 games. And if a guy's getting 4 at-bats a game, maybe that's 150, 160. He cannot exceed 130 at-bats the rest of the way. Now, that being said, at-bats is kind of a weird way to measure that compared to plate appearances, because if you draw a walk or have a sacrifice fly, those don't count as at-bats. Plate appearances would be the way to make this make a lot of sense, but it's kind of, I guess, an archaic way of figuring rookie eligibility. It's 130 at-bats. So my expectation for Masyn Winn, he's probably going to bat last. He's going to be like my baseball coach back after I went to a River City Rascals game with our baseball team when I was a kid, and there was a pop fly, and we were sitting behind the home dugout, and it was in foul territory, and I was looking up at it, and I thought, wow, that ball's coming really close to me. And then it just kept getting closer and closer, and I thought, I never get foul balls. This really might come near me. And then by the time I realized it hit me right in the eye, had a black eye. I believe it must have been my left eye, because what my baseball coach said to me was, look, if you want to play in tomorrow's game, or whatever game that week it was, which I said, yeah, I really want to play. He said, listen, you got to play right field. You're going to have to bat last, and you have to bat left-handed. I was switch hitting at the time, and it was my left eye that was completely swollen and ridiculous looking, so needed the right eye to be closer to the pitcher's mound. You're going to bat right-handed. I said, that's fine. I don't care. I just want to get to play. That's going to be the deal for Masyn Winn. I think he's going to have to bat last. He's probably 8th or 9th in the order. Either that, or they're going to have to give him a lot of sporadic off days just to make sure that he does not exceed 130 ABs. That's why I thought maybe there was a world in which they would wait a little bit longer for Masyn Winn, to where the folks upstairs wouldn't have to tell Ollie Marmol, hey, make sure he doesn't get 130 at-bats. But I think everybody can be on the same page about that, and the easiest way to do it is to just have him bat lower in the order, get his feet wet, kind of the way they've done with Jordan Walker anyway this year. There's no reason to force it. And he can be kind of that second leadoff guy, because he does have that sort of skill set. I mentioned that he could potentially be a 5-tool player for the Cardinals, and I think that's a realistic possibility for Winn down the line. We know his defense is really strong. His throwing arm is instantly going to be the best in the game at shortstop. He will set the StatCast record this year for the strongest throw from the shortstop position in Major League Baseball. Like, that is going to happen. O'Neal Cruz, I know you had fun, and whoever else was kind of in that range that can do it. Masyn Winn's going to do it. I can promise you, because already in the futures game, the one opportunity he said, I'm going to let it rip, he instantly, by multiple miles per hour, had a harder throw than anybody has ever done in Major League Baseball. The hardest throw, I believe, of the StatCast era when he did it. So I have no doubt in my mind that Masyn Winn's going to do that, so there's no question about his defense. Base running, like he is an athletic guy. I don't know what the sprint speed is necessarily, but last year between high A and double A, he had stolen 43 bases in 48 attempts. So he's got wheels on him, no doubt about that. This year, not as active on the base paths, so I'll be interested to see kind of what he does when he gets to St. Louis. I say they probably tell him to let it rip the rest of the season, just because the Cardinals aren't in contention, and a way you can try and force the issue to win more games, which Masyn Winn's going to want to do and help his team do, is maybe to force it in the running game. 17 for 19, though, this season with AAA Memphis in stolen base attempts. So a very successful percentage. He just hasn't done it as much as you maybe would have expected. But 17 stolen bases, 17 home runs as well. He is a definite 2020 threat, I think, when he gets to the big leagues and really gets to settle in. But the kid's just 21 years old, so don't necessarily heap the world on his shoulders at this point. But when you just think of raw materials and skill set, all right, he can hit for some home run power, maybe 20-plus home runs a year in the big leagues. I'm not saying he's going to do that right away, but down the road, as he continues to grow into his frame and get acclimated to the big league competition, I think he could do 20 home runs in a big league season. 20 stolen bases, I think, is certainly within the range of possibilities, but again, a lot of guys who run wild in the minors don't always maintain that when they get to the big leagues, so we'll see what that ends up being for Masyn Winn. He's hitting for a 283 batting average. Maybe he's more of a 260, 270 guy as he settles into the big leagues, but drawing a number of walks this year, 44 walks and 494 plate appearances for Memphis to get that on-base percentage to 356, and he certainly has the speed and power capabilities to have extra base hits, 15 doubles and 7 triples, which contributes, along with those 17 home runs, to the 465 slugging percentage that Masyn Winn has put together this year with Memphis, all coming into an 821 OPS. If Masyn Winn is even like a 760, 770 OPS in the big leagues, which I'm just talking long term. I'm not saying right out of the gate he needs to be that for the Cardinals. That would be wonderful if he was, because you look at a guy like Nolan Gorman last year who had a 720 OPS, has risen to 818 or so this season, has nearly gained 100 points on the OPS compared to what he did in his initial campaign last year. Jordan Walker, he's at 746 right now for his OPS. Maybe that's underwhelming to you, but again, for a 21-year-old guy just stepping into the majors after not playing but 29 games in his life in AAA, that's impressive, and I think it's only going to be something that Jordan Walker can build upon as he gets more acclimated beyond 2023. Masyn Winn is a similar story. If he could come right in and go 740, 750 OPS, I think that would be fantastic. Later on, as he continues to grow and develop, to be a 775 OPS, that would be more than enough to be a very valuable player with what I expect him to bring on the defensive side. So you've got the defense, you've got the glove work, the throwing arm, the power potential. He could hit for a decent enough batting average and steal you some bases. He's got all the tools. It's going to be a lot of fun for Cardinals fans to get to watch now Masyn Winn try to put it all together on the big league roster. He's coming to St. Louis Friday. I almost can guarantee he's going to be in that starting lineup for the Cardinals. How excited are you, Cardinals fans, to finally see the moment arrive where Masyn Winn is on this team? We're going to see him and Jordan Walker in the same Cardinals lineup. It's been a few years. That 2020 draft seems like it was long ago, but in reality, just 3 summers ago. But now it has come full circle with Walker and Winn both making it through the Cardinals farm system all the way to St. Louis, where they will both be in that lineup, we presume, Friday night against the New York Mets. So let me know in the YouTube comment section below how excited you are for Masyn Winn's time to finally be here for the Cardinals. It makes a lot of sense to do it right now. Like I said, I was off by one day. I thought the number was Saturday because I thought if he had 45 days in the big leagues, that was no bueno. I was wrong. 45 is perfectly fine, which means Friday is going to be the day. They waited to the exact day that they could to maintain his rookie eligibility for next year, which I have said all along I'm on board with. There's no reason to jeopardize that, and the Cardinals aren't going to. But now that he's here and it's going to not mess up anything for next year, I think it can add a little bit more excitement for Cardinals fans the rest of the way. But let me know what you guys think in the YouTube comments. Make sure you click subscribe on this video and like it. Let me know about not only Masyn Winn, but Adam Wainwright's start tonight for the Cardinals as well on Thursday and what you expect to see from him moving forward. Other injury notes that we could probably talk about include maybe waiting to see what happens with Tommy Edman and how he shakes out from his recent injury. Lars Nootbaar being on the IL. Nolan Gorman going on the IL officially was inevitable, I think, today. Richie Palacios gets the call for the Cardinals. He can play a little bit of second base, but mostly an outfielder for St. Louis, I expect. Has a 418 OPS, or pardon me, that wouldn't be very good. A 418 on base percentage, an OBP of 418 with Memphis since the Cardinals acquired him from the Cleveland Guardians earlier this season. So he could be a guy that they'll get a look at and see what he can bring offensively to the table. Maybe kind of reminds you of Oscar Mercado, but I think could be a little bit more notable with the bat if he can translate some of that on-base ability that he had with Memphis into the big league level. We'll see what it looks like for Palacios, but it just was time to stop kicking the can down the road when it came to the Nolan Gorman back tightness, back injury, back strain, whatever you want to call it. I believe they did call it a lower back strain for Gorman when they put him on the IL officially on Thursday afternoon. But that move allows the Cardinals to have at least a little bit less of a short bench because you knew that Edman and Nootbaar would maybe be a little bit under the weather today. Now Nootbaar being the guy to go IL in favor of Masyn Winn. It's a different look Cardinals lineup the rest of the way. I honestly, too, think Cesar Prieto should be on this team within the next week or two. The prospect that the Cardinals got from the Baltimore Orioles in the Jack Flaherty deal, his numbers at Memphis are really good. He is kind of a mini Luis Arias, the way that we've talked about his game, and just a very high contact hitter, high batting average guy that can draw some walks and get on base as well. Not going to be a huge power hitter, but I think you put him at second base every day. I think you go ahead and put Masyn Winn at shortstop every day. You probably need Tommy Edman in the outfield for the time being. Maybe you need him at second base. I don't know. With the Gorman injury and the Donovan injury, Edman may just be asked to continue to wear a lot of hats right now for the Cardinals if and when he's able to stave off an IL trip. I would continue calling up the young guys, whether that's Nick Dunn, who can really only play second base but has fantastic numbers for Memphis. We've talked about him on previous Be Safe Daily episodes. There is no reason at this point to continue having guys that you don't consider part of your future getting at bats for this team. I'm not going to continue to belabor the point because a lot of Cardinals fans have beat this dead horse. Guys like Taylor Motter, yeah, they're not part of the future. I'm with you guys. I don't think there's a benefit to having him take at bats away from developing players and finding other guys that you can learn about, right? You can get information about these players, see how they handle the big league atmosphere, and make decisions about them moving forward as a result. God bless Taylor Motter. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but he's a big leaguer out there trying to do his best as well, so I'm not going to belabor that point. But yes, I think at some point you do need to see some of those Memphis guys coming to the big leagues, especially the guys that, yeah, if they're not on the 40-man roster, okay, you're going to probably lose them in the offseason to the Rule 5 draft potentially anyway. You might as well throw them on the 40-man now, see if they get claimed on waivers if you ever have to move them off the roster. But I can find close to a dozen guys on the 40-man that probably aren't going to be on the 40-man next year when you think about a lot of the clutter that's on this roster right now and the moves that are going to need to be made. So I say get some excitement into the game, allow some of these younger players, and even the guys who aren't that young but are not experienced at the big league level, like a 26 or so year old Nick Dunn, get those guys to St. Louis, put them in the lineup every day, and see what it looks like. I don't think there's a downside to that. I haven't said a lot about this, and I know Cardinals fans are kind of beating that horse, beating that drum. I understand why you would. I'm on the same page with you guys, but for whatever reason, the Cardinals are content to just kind of let this play out a little bit and not go too crazy with making too many changes at once. We'll see if that changes as we really delve into a developmental stage with September baseball coming up soon. It's not going to be the way that it used to be when you could have a 40-man roster and everybody's up in St. Louis. I do think they still cap it at like 28 or 29, but nevertheless, it could be time to kind of shift the gear from, hey, we've got to win every game, which is still important, but also, hey, how can we develop some of these younger players or at least get a look at them the rest of the way? That's the way I see it. Let me know how you see it in the YouTube comment sections below, and make sure you're subscribed to the Be Safe Daily podcast, the daily Cardinals podcast that we do post on YouTube, but it runs every day on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Search for it on your favorite podcast apps and give us those 5-star reviews so that we can continue to grow this podcast and let other people know that it exists. Thank you guys so much for being Cardinals fans that listen to Be Safe Daily on a regular basis. I appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you next time on Be Safe Daily. Peace.